What's up, Dfine Nation, and welcome to another episode of Define Your Health with Danielle Girdano, strength through knowledge. And I tell you what, guys, I am absolutely on fire today, and this is a show I have been waiting to do, and so I am super excited. Raul might need to wear a seatbelt today. I'm not sure. I'm super excited today, guys. You guys all know that I am a strong advocate of having knowledge, and that knowledge is power. All of you also know that I am a strong advocate of getting rid of GMOs, or at least labeling GMOs, having knowledge about what exactly those are. There's still a lot of confusion out there on this topic, and why this topic is so important, and really what are the implications and complications that come from eating and being exposed to these type of foods or ingredients that go into foods. I am very excited today to have from GMO Free USA, Diana Reeves, who is the founder and executive director of the organization, an absolutely phenomenal organization. And she has what is just an amazing story. We're going to get into parts of that as we go through. But Diana was the recipient of the Healthy Child, Healthy World 2013 Mom on a Mission Award, and she is also a member of the steering committee of GMO Free Global Coalition and the co-chair of the GMO Action Alliance. And before this, Diana, you were an executive. You were a CPA at a major accounting firm, and you were on your way up the corporate ladder, and you decided to have a complete turnaround. So first of all, welcome to Dfine Nation, and welcome to our show. And take a minute and tell us a little bit about that transformation.
Thank you so much for having me on today, Danielle. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. My life, life doesn't always turn out the way you think it's going to. When I met my husband, I said yes, but after he asked me to marry him, I'm a career woman, and you have to understand that I'm going to continue working even, if we have a family, because it's very important to me. But what happened changed all of that. Our firstborn was diagnosed with a tumor, and it was in his brain. It was inoperable at the time it was diagnosed. It was subsequently removed by a relatively new surgical technique, but the bottom line is it changed everything, and that day was my last day of work, and I became a stay-at-home mom, and stayed there for the most part until I got involved in the GMO movement.
Wow, and there's not too many people who could walk away from a career that was building like yours was. And so I absolutely commend you. And I know that there's a lot of mothers who find themselves in that situation where they are career-oriented, and then something happens with a family member, and then that plan takes a derailment. So you are absolutely a role model. And really someone that I think other people can relate to and look up to. And so GMOs, Diana, oh boy, GMOs. Tell me and tell our listeners what your definition, how you see, what exactly is a GMO? Because it kind of almost sounds like a car or something. I don't know. I'm not a car person, but...
Well, GMOs are an acronym that's been assigned to what's known as genetically modified organisms. They're also known as genetically engineered organisms, and they are primarily created in the laboratories of chemical companies like Monsanto and Dow and DuPont and Syngenta. These are companies that brought us Agent Orange, DDT, PCBs, and other chemicals, and told us that they were safe as well. What they do is they overcome the laws of nature, and they force genes from unrelated species, from viruses, bacteria, and antibiotic-resistant markers into the DNA of these plant organisms. And then they're allowed to patent them. And there are primarily two traits that have been engineered into the genetically engineered crops, which are in our food supply. We have herbicide resistance, and we have pesticide producing. Most of the GMO crops, all of the huge commodity crops such as corn, soy, beets for sugar beet, for sugar production, canola, cotton for cottonseed oil, alfalfa, those have all been engineered to be able to tolerate being sprayed with Roundup, or glyphosate is the active ingredient. It's now available generically because it's off patent. But the glyphosate that's sprayed on these crops is absorbed into the crops, and I think it's important to note that the USDA does not do any testing for glyphosate residue. And not only that, but over the course of the last several years since GMOs have been on food supply, they've incrementally increased the allowable tolerance level for glyphosate residue in these crops without any scientific reason to do so, based on the requests of these chemical companies.
Now, Diana, let me just back you up. Let me just back you up a second, because I really want to break this topic down. Now, when you had originally started talking about, what is a GMO, you're talking about chemicals. Can you further elaborate on exactly how are these gene mutations happened? I mean, we know that it makes them resistant to pesticides, herbicides, those type of things. But can you break that down in more detail for our listeners? Because I think all of us kind of hear those sound bites of, oh, well, there's chemicals and that's what it is. But nobody really takes the time to break it down. Could you do that for our listeners?
So what happens is, in the laboratories, they either use a gene gun, which shoots these genes into the DNA of the plants and they land in random places, or they use promotoviruses like the cauliflower mosaic virus, and genes from these viruses and bacteria do end up in the DNA of these plants. It's not a precise science, and there's a lot of cause for concern for several reasons. Potentially collateral damage when you insert something into DNA and the surrounding genetics, and also because the entire concept is based on flawed reasoning, flawed science. The way they treat these genes are as if they manufacture one protein per gene. But in actuality, the science has come a long way since this conception was used to develop these plants. For example, there are 100,000 or so proteins in the human body, and when they started mapping the human genome, they expected to find 100,000 or so genes. But in fact, what they found was 20 to 25,000 genes. And so what that means is genes are multifunctional. So when you insert a gene that relates to, say, Roundup resistance into the DNA of a plant, they haven't come far enough to understand what other functions that gene might bring and introduce into the DNA of the plant, or how it actually relates to and affects the other genes in that DNA. So, the way things happen in nature, they evolve together and they work together, but when you introduce a foreign gene, really the effects are unknown. So it's a concern, in terms of unintended side effects and consequences.
Okay, and Diana, that is, we're gonna get right back into that after this first commercial break. Dfine Nation, remember that this segment is brought to you by Primal Cycling Apparel. When passion drives you, there's no other choice than Primal. Visit them today at primalwear.com. That's PRIMAL wear.com. Hey, Dfine Nation, this is Danielle from the Define Your Health Strength Through Knowledge radio show. And when I chose the gear I would use during the Highway for Health cycling project, I chose only the best. And that meant I chose Primal for my cycling apparel. Their quality is simply unmatched by anyone in the industry. And the creative design geniuses are innovative engineers. For your next team event or local riding group jerseys, check out my Primal friends at primalwear.com. That's PRIMAL wear.com. Hey, Dfine Nation, this is Danielle from Define Your Health with Danielle Girdano. I know everyone looks forward to their cheat day, but even though that may be your day to indulge your sweet tooth, remember to keep it organic and non-GMO with treats from our friend at D Sweets. Recipes passed down from generation to generation using only the highest quality ingredients delivered straight to your door. The only hard part is waiting until cheat day to dig in. Visit them today at dsweets.com. That's DSWEETS.com. And we are back to Dfine Nation with our very special guest, Diana Reeves, who is the founder and executive director of GMO Free USA. And we are having a amazing conversation about specifically what is a GMO, why are these harmful, and how exactly do we identify these. But first, Diana, you were saying before the break, now you're telling me they're actually taking a gun and they're injecting chemicals, poisons, into the actual seed, which permanently alters the seed, and we don't have any long-term studies on what kind of effects this has, but yet we're feeding this to the American population?
Now, I wouldn't say that they're actually injecting chemicals. What they're injecting is genes from unrelated species, including viruses and bacteria, and Bt toxins, which are actually a soil bacteria which functions as a pesticide. And then they're spraying them with chemicals, and the chemicals are absorbed into the plant. So there's a bit of a difference there. It's sometimes a misconception. But the implications are, yes, that the unknown effects on our health are really not being monitored. There have been no human studies, and the animal feeding studies which are done, which supposedly are the voluntary safety assessments, are done for a very short period of time. They're 90-day studies, and they do not address potential chronic long-term toxicity, which is what we believe is happening to the general population.
Well, I tell you what, anybody that takes any kind of pesticide and injects it into what I'm eating, I'm not eating it. How about that? That's
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
I consider that a chemical. How about that? In my world, that's a chemical.
And these genes, I might add, are synthesized in the lab. They are not equivalent to what's found in nature. And, the genes from these Bt toxins, which are the insecticides that are produced by, say, corn, and now, as a matter of fact, by soy, because that's also been approved, those Bt toxin genes have been detected in the blood serum of 93% of pregnant women tested in a study in Canada, and also found in the cord blood of 80% of their unborn babies. So there is no human health monitoring going on, and without a label, there's no traceability, there's no accountability, and there's no liability. And that's the way they like it.
Well, and it seems like deceptive is I think the kindest word that I can use at this point. It seems like deceptive knowledge that is trying to be pumped into the American public's living rooms, newspapers, magazines, and on the grocery shelves. And so, Diana, that brings up another great point that I want to address here, because I think there's a lot of confusion when it comes to GMOs, because people go, well, we've been crossbreeding plants for hundreds of years. This is, how do you think we got all the different types of tomatoes and cucumbers and things like that? So specifically, what is the difference between the genetically engineered crops and plants that are crossbred through natural processes?
So basically, the genetically engineered crops are either transgenic or cisgenic, and those are things that don't happen in nature.
Now, what are those two things? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what are those two things?
So transgenic crops are those which contain genes from unrelated species. And nature has set up some boundaries where you can't breed a cat with a dog, for example. Okay. And you can't breed a cauliflower mosaic virus with an ear of corn under normal circumstances. But they force the DNA from the cauliflower mosaic virus into the DNA of the corn when they're engineering it in a lab. And they also force things like antibiotic-resistant markers, which allow them to identify the location that this randomly placed cauliflower mosaic virus DNA lands in the corn. So there are things in there that cannot get in there naturally. It just doesn't happen in nature. Conventional plant breeding happens, in the fields or, in a greenhouse or, a laboratory, and it uses pollen to breed things which are, in the same species.
So, in other words, a good way to think of this is the cauliflower is the cat and the broccoli is the dog. Or I'm sorry, is that the two vegetables that you said?
Yes, I think that is a relevant analogy, yeah.
Okay. My good. Now who would do that? Wow, okay, well, that puts it into context. And so what I'd like to do, and when we come back from this next segment, is I'd really like to go into really how common are GMOs. I mean, is it something that really is as widespread as what some people who have been called radical, which I'm proud to say that I'm one of those people. Is it really that widespread, or is it really more contained and really not something that we need to worry about? So we're going to get into that whenever we get back. Dfine Nation, remember that this segment is brought to you by Latip International, where members are like family and dollars always end up in your pocket. Serious business, serious bottom line profits. Visit them today at letip.com. That's LETIP.com. Hey, Dfine Nation, this is Danielle Girdano from Define Your Health, Strength Through Knowledge. And as a small business owner, I know marketing and advertising costs keep skyrocketing, so businesses must make every dollar count. Those who know serious bottom line profits know Latip International. With a proven history of helping small businesses be successful through smart growth and lead generation, Latip is forging new frontiers of innovative ways to support, educate, and cultivate the development of their members' bottom line profits. If your business needs to grow, and whose doesn't, check out letip.com. That's LETIP.com.
Water.com offers specific services to help you get the best water you can take. From nutritional information to in-home testing of your tap water. The water you drink should be at its best. When it's at its best, you're at your best. So check in with ewater.com. ewater.com for water purification and other essentials. Give them a call and find out what you're missing. 1-800-964-4303 or visit them at ewater.com. Again, that's 1-800-964-4303 or at ewater.com.
And we are back to Dfine Nation with our special guest, Diana Reeves, who is, I am just so thrilled that she is on the show today. She is the founder and executive director of GMO Free USA. And Diana, let's get right back into it. Now, we've identified that GMOs, it's ludicrous to think that they're safe, or at least a logical person, when you talk about how they're engineered in a lab, to think that they're safe. It kind of makes you laugh when you think of the analogy that they're essentially trying to breed plants like you would breed a cat and a dog. It's just not something that is meant to happen in nature. So another big question is really how rampant are GMOs? How common are GMOs in the grocery store? You make a common trip to do your weekly shopping. How common are GMOs? How many products are these really in?
So basically, I think what we have is approximately 80% of the number that's, mostly kicked around of the processed foods in the grocery store contain some genetically engineered ingredients. The bulk of the big food brands, which would be Kellogg's, for example, and General Mills and all of their others, contain Pepsi, Coke, Frito-Lay, all contain mostly ingredients derived from corn, soy, sugar, canola, cottonseed that are genetically engineered. Those crops are, I would say, in the upper 90% of all of the corn, soy, sugar beets, canola, cotton grown in the U.S., upper 90s are all genetically engineered. And then we also have, and alfalfa is primarily for animal feed, but there's always a risk for, cross-contamination. It's around the bready alfalfa that's being grown now. But there are also some whole foods as well, which are making their way into our food supply. Most of the papaya that comes out of Hawaii is GMO papaya. It's a virus-resistant papaya, and there has been no human health trials, no safety testing on that. A chunk of the zucchini and summer squash as well are genetically engineered. And there has been, no statistic available, but there will be some testing done from what I understand, which should help us quantify how much of it is out there. Because cross-pollination is a big risk when you're growing zucchini and squash. Those little bees carry the pollen, and you never know where it's going to end up. So in addition to that aspartame, all of the aspartame out there is a genetically engineered ingredient. It's a genetically engineered sweetener, and most people aren't aware of that. And then there are two new crops which have just been approved and are making their way into our food supply, which are a potato, which supposedly doesn't brown as much as a normal potato, and an apple, which is called the Arctic apple, which is also a non-browning apple. And the potato and the apple use a different technique, which is called cisgenics, which involves turning genes off. So apparently there's a gene in the apple and a gene in the potato which cause the apple to brown, so they've turned it off so that it doesn't brown the way a normal apple would, which is, I guess a concern because you don't know if something is really rotten if it doesn't look rotten. And it's also a concern from a health standpoint because when you turn off the gene that, from what I understand, causes an apple to brown, you also, back to the point where genes are multifunctional, multi-purpose, where you also reduce the apple's natural ability to fight off pests. So the concern is that they're going to be spraying a lot more chemicals on these apples in order to, grow them. So that is basically what's in the food supply now.
Well, and what's scary about, what people really need to know is it's not just, now, of course, I'm very proud to be a vegan, and I think living a vegan lifestyle, I don't think there's too many doctors out there that tell you to eat more brisket. I'll put it to you that way. And, what's kind of scary about what you're saying is this isn't only in raw ingredients, but these are also things that are being fed to the animals that, in turn, we are getting, or some people get food products from. That is what you're saying, correct?
Absolutely. And they say we need GMOs to feed the world, but a huge chunk of the corn that's grown is used for biofuel, and a huge chunk is used for animal feed. And really the amount of corn that's GMO corn that makes its way into the food supply is insignificant compared to the total grown. But we are exposed through the animals because there have been studies that show that the DNA from these transgenic crops does pass through into the milk and also does remain in the tissue of these animals. So there was a test done recently, there was a study published out of Europe, and I think they found that 35% of the animals tested, they were able to detect transgenic DNA from GMO feed. So, and that's in Europe, and I don't think it's quite as prevalent there as it is here.
Wow, that is just absolutely astonishing what you're saying. And Diana, I'd like to finish up. If you could please mention, there are folks that are actively trying to do this. One of the things that you guys are participating in this summer is you're actually touring with Neil Young. Could you just briefly take about 30 seconds and just elaborate on that for us?
We were very, very excited. We're honored to have been invited to tour with Neil Young this summer. He's doing a tour to promote his new studio album, which is called The Monsanto Years. And Neil is very much against genetically engineered foods because of the health risks and because of the environmental risks and because of the enslaving which is going on of our farmers. Basically, they don't have many options in many places, but the genetically engineered seeds, which cost more, come with technology fees and have chemicals attached to them. So we're thrilled to be able to educate concert goers at each of the venues. We'll be in a tent, which is the GMO information tent, and we'll be passing out information. And it's going to be very exciting. We'll be gone most of the month of July.
Well, Diana, I cannot thank you enough for being a guest on. Honestly, I think this topic deserves a second show, and so we are absolutely going to do that. So if you would like, I would like to have you come back on and do another show and kind of continue this conversation, because there is so much crucial information that needs to be out there and that people need to know about. So Diana, are you willing to come back again so we can chat a little bit more about this?
I would love to, and if we could just tell everyone to avoid GMOs if they can look for organics, because by definition they can't be grown from genetically engineered seeds, or the Non-GMO Project verified label, which is a little butterfly. The Non-GMO Project actually tests the inputs and the supply chain, or grow your own. Hopefully people will be inspired to start their own little heirloom garden, which is what I do, and enjoy every bit of it.
Awesome. Well, Dfine Nation, please go check out www.gmofreeusa.org. That's gmofreeusa.org. Dfine Nation, remember to check out their Facebook page, that facebook.com/GMO-free-USA. They are constantly updating the site with prevalent information and information that you should be aware of to protect you and your family. And get equipped with knowledge. Also, remember, Dfine Nation, we will be posting that trivia question for the $500 prize pack giveaway via Facebook later on this evening. So stay well, Dfine Nation. Keep thirsting for that knowledge. And remember, motivated, dedicated, and highly recommended. Bye-bye.
For 20 years, Nordic Naturals has been dedicated to making the best fish oil on the planet. Their motivation? The heartfelt belief that a single nutrient can change lives. Their love for what they do and the people they do it for drives them to do it right at any cost. That means products that are outrageously fresh, obsessively tested, and passionately perfected. Products that taste so pure, you'll love them. Try Nordic Naturals award-winning omega-3s today and taste pure love. Available at natural product stores nationwide or at NordicNaturals.com.